Hello, everybody. The webinar will begin very shortly. We're just going to take a few moments while everybody joins the call. So, good afternoon from London, everybody. But I think where most of you are joining us from in America, it's probably good morning. Big hello from me. I'm Siobhan Bonita. I'm a former UK civil servant. I'm delighted to be hosting today's webinar on behalf of Global Government Forum. We're an organisation that works with civil servants and public servants all around the world. Welcome to today's conversation, which is all about how to build digital government capacity. And in terms of that topic, we're going to be looking at how strengthening digital government capability is a central priority for governments all around the world. As they look to kind of adopt new technologies to improve services, many government organisations are focused on growing things like digital skills, changing their structures, and building that capacity needed to deliver really modern, citizen centred public services. So, we're going to be talking about all of those things with a fantastic panel. And in a moment, I'm going to introduce our three great speakers, and then we're going to get into a conversation. But before I introduce our speakers, I just want to encourage you, our audience, to also get involved. We want to make this as interactive a conversation as we possibly can. So whichever device you are using today, you should see somewhere on your screen there is a Q&A button. Please use that Q&A button at any moment from now on. Don't wait until the end of the webinar. If you hear something one of our speakers is saying and you want to comment or you want to send in a question, please just use that Q&A function to do that, and we will get through as many of those comments and questions as we can before the end of the webinar. But in terms of our fantastic panel that we have with us here today, I'm delighted to introduce, we've got Dan Pomeroy, who is the Deputy Associate Administrator at the Office of Technology Policy in the GSA, the General Services Administration. Dan is an accomplished federal executive with 23 years of distinguished service. And in his current role, he drives federal IT policy and strategic planning, which includes advancing government transparency via the IT portfolio management and managing the government-wide digital accessibility programme, so Section 508, driving significant improvements in federal technology accessibility. Dan also serves as GSA Standards Executive, overseeing the agency's participation in national and international standards bodies, and previously as Director of GSA's Data Center and Cloud Optimization Initiative. His leadership contributed to all federal agencies receiving an A grade on the FITARA scorecard. Then we've got Ankur Saini, who is Chief Product and Technology Officer at the Department of Transportation. Ankur has over 20 years of experience driving large-scale digital transformations and delivering measurable business value. In his current role, he leads the overarching technology strategy supporting Vision Zero, which is the department's mission to eliminate road fatalities. Under his guidance, the department modernisation initiatives achieved significant acclaim, earning the prestigious CIO 100 Award for innovation 3 years in a row. Previously, Ankur held senior leadership roles at the GSA as well, and in the private sector, where he built a reputation for blending strategic vision with customer-centric execution. And then last but by no means least, we've got Dr. Nikki Collier, who is Deputy Assistant Attorney General for Information Resources Management and Chief Information Officer at the Department of Justice. Nikki has more than 30 years of experience in IT and cyber security operations. She oversees service delivery, resource management, and cyber security in support of the DOJ's mission critical operations. She leads the enterprise IT strategy, manages a multi-billion-dollar IT investment portfolio, and ensures compliance with federal cybersecurity statutory regulations. In 2025, she established the department's Digital and Customer Experience Program Office, solidifying her commitment to delivering high-quality, digital-first services that meet the needs of all customers and consumers. Nikki is a US Army veteran with 22 years of service, retiring as a Sergeant Major. So I'm sure you'll agree, we really do have a fantastic panel with us here today. As I say to you, the audience, please use this opportunity to ask any questions that you've got. I don't want you leaving the webinar thinking, I wish I'd asked that question. So to kick off our discussion, Dan, I'm going to start with you, but I'm really going to ask this question, I think, to all three of our speakers. When it comes to this topic of building digital capacity and capability, what would your priorities be right now? Where do you think we're doing well? Where do you think there's more to be done? If you could just give us that kind of general sense of things.
Yeah, thank you so much, and I do appreciate you throwing the question to me first because I can hit the most obvious answer, and then the other panelists have the more difficult job.
Absolutely.
It's easy just to run to AI real quick, but the purpose of this webinar is to talk about boosting digital capacities, and we know that through this new disruptive technology, through AI, that our digital workers now have a very strong tool set to help them develop code or to check code or to integrate in cyber activities that we just didn't have in previous iterations. For us, looking at agencies, we've seen a lot of success around agencies that have identified a clear, aligned environment for AI experimentation, where that trial and error work can happen in a safe and policy compliant way. So that's what we did here at GSA. We built it out for ourselves, and then because of the mission of the General Services Administration, we made that capability available to other agencies, and that's what we call the USAI platform right now. But any platform will do if you can't get access to that. I think the concept here is to make sure that you have the ability for folks at lots of different levels of maturity in the IT stack to experiment, to look for efficiencies. One of the areas that we've seen that maybe we've hit some bumpy roads is building new business processes around the new technology has been less effective than just using the technology to accelerate existing business processes. It's been harder to get people to change to a new way of getting work done just because we had the new tool. And we said, great, look at all the things the tool is doing. And if it's not solving a problem that doesn't already exist today or accelerate work that's already happening today, we find that sometimes those projects have higher risk for permanent uptake. So those are areas that we're really thinking about hard and making sure that we're not just thinking about them, but we're rolling out tools to our federal partners and at GSA allowing state and local governments to use our contract vehicles to purchase new technology, which is a big thing. I also, just because we're using a new disruptive technology doesn't mean we can forget our old traditional responsibilities. And one of the responsibilities that my team has government-wide is to remind the government that it is responsible under the law to provide IT accessibility under the Section 508 of the Rehabilitation Act. And so just because it's working and you're working faster doesn't mean that folks won't need access to the stuff and that you don't need to pay attention to those policy frameworks that really do matter. But it's an exciting time and things are changing. You can be disrupted by the technology disruptor, or you can, find ways that disruption is going to create new successes for your enterprise. I really appreciate the question, and I'll pass it along to my fantastic panelists.
Thank you. Thanks, Dan. Really great place to start. I think interesting that you say you're one of the priorities you're focusing on now. One of the big things that you're looking at is that creating those safe spaces for AI experimentation so people can really test in a safe way. Because that kind of implies, I think, that you're already quite a way down the line on digital transformation, that you have some of those foundations in place to be able to deploy AI. But also, I loved what you say, because this has come up in a lot of the events that GGF do. it's not a good thing to digitalize a bad process, that actually you need to be fundamentally changing your business processes as part of this transformation journey as well. So I really like that you've brought that in from the start. And then again, another key point, which maybe our other panelists and the audience want to pick up on as well, is that in this digitalizing kind of era when we're building new capacity, we don't want to create new divisions. We don't want to create a digitally excluded group of people. So really important that you have that as a priority up front as well. Thanks so much, Dan. Great place to kick us off with. Ankur, I'm coming over to you. Does that kind of resonate with you? Are you similarly focusing on the same kind of things over there in Department of Transportation?
Similar and different in a little bit. But the one thing that resonated with me was the don't digitize a bad process comment. It's like I was at a conference and somebody said one thing that has stuck with me for a long time is a fool with a tool is still a fool. By giving them a tool, you make them faster, right? So you probably don't want to do that. So Department of Transportation by statute is a safety organization. Most of the work that we do is safety related. There's some national security components to that, but most of the stuff that we do is primarily to ensure people and goods that are moving through the country are moving in a safe manner. One of the modes of transportation that are under my purview is trucking. And unfortunately, about 6,000 people die every year on roads due to crashes that are attributable to large trucks or buses, which are in the same category. So the way we go about building digital capacity or having technology products that can support the mission, our North Star is to reduce that number from 6,000 as close to zero as possible, right? Unfortunately, it's not an easy answer because 70% of American freight moves on trucks. There's about 10 million trucks on the road, 6 million drivers. So in that perspective, 6,000 is not a big number, but if it's your family number, even one is a huge number. That's an empty, chair at the dining table. So it's a tough mission. Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, that is an agency under transportation that regulates large trucks and buses. On a bright sunny day, is a 1,000 to an 1,100 person organization, right? So for us, regulating an industry that is massive, about a million active trucking companies, as I said, 6 million drivers, 10 million trucks on the road, and 1,000 people regulating, there's a huge gap in terms of who is doing what. So this is where technology comes in, and we can bridge that gap to build that capacity that allows us to deploy sensors, whether it's people or automated, across the nation, monitor what's going on, prevent bad actors from coming into the ecosystem, and deploying a mesh of technology that allows us to ensure that people that are in the trucking business are safe to start, safe to operate, and if they're not, there's enough enforcement. So for us, having a technology strategy that allows us to regulate that scale is very important. So when we talk about building capacity, the scale of operations comes to mind, and also collaboration. So the Motor Carrier Safety Administration, it works with law enforcement agencies across the United States. All of them, as you would imagine, are very different in terms of their maturity, in terms of technology and services that they have, services they consume. So we have to design products that can bridge that gap as well, right? And they're all trying to solve different problems. Problems on the southern border of Texas are very different from problems in Kansas. But the products that we develop have to have the core safety elements that are applicable all across the board. but we have to design for the nuances each state has. So pretty similar to what Dan just said, we always have to have an experimentation mindset because these are all complex problems. If they were easy enough, people would have solved it already. But the reason why they haven't solved is they have second, third, fourth degree impacts that we only find out when we deploy certain things. So we have to have an experimentation mindset, but at the same time, especially in the case of transportation, we have to have safety always at the forefront so that allows us to do these experiments at costs that are acceptable.
Yeah. Anka, thank you so much. Really interesting because such a different examples, I think, from what Dan was saying, but really interesting the way that you phrased it there, that you're looking at technology to kind of supplement and help support your human workforce, just because you can't possibly have the number of people that you would want to be able to kind of oversee the, as you say, the millions of truckers that you oversee in terms of that sector. So using technology to help supplement that workforce, a couple of the things I think we'll come on to some of the benefits, but I think you mentioned there prevention of kind of bad actors. So boosting your ability to detect people that aren't abiding by the regulations and the safety requirements, but also boosting enforcement using technology in those kind of areas. And then also, as you say, that technology, as building on what Dan said, can help in that innovation space, can help you be creative and experiment and kind of develop products that have that core safety feature at their heart, but are also flexible enough to meet the needs across those differences across America. So already really interesting to see how technology is being used and you're building this digital capacity in different ways. We've already got a question coming in as well, but I'm going to park Sarah's question just until we hear from Nikki, because I think it's a question that all of you will be interested in answering. So Nikki, you've heard from Dan and Ankur. Does this resonate with you as well in the DOJ?
Absolutely, Siobhan. And Dan and Ankur have taken all the good points. So I'll try to see what's left for me.
And I promise I'll come to you first on the next round of questions.
No pressure at all. But I do want to lean into how I have approached, digital capacity. Especially, I've just recently been appointed as the department's chief information officer, and having more of a voice because we have 40 sub agencies across the department that have critical missions, but not necessarily unique. We all hear those terms all the time when we're thinking about organizations, and everyone thinks their organization is unique. But what I'm doing is trying to level set how we are approaching our services and how our services support the public, and trying to ensure that we can deliver secure and reliable and modern services. And so I'm really just ripping the Band-Aid off and kind of taking a level setting approach on getting back to the basics. And that means to, take a deep look at our existing systems. We know, unfortunately, when we talk about government, many of our systems have been around decades, and we just continue to put a Band-Aid on it. I think Dan kind of hit on something. This is an opportunity for us to really, under this new administration and the emphasis on customer and digital experience, really take a deep look at how our systems, how the public interacts with our systems and our services. And one of the things that we had an opportunity to do was rationalize our websites, our public-facing websites, meaning what value, how much are those websites being used? What is the content on those websites? And if they had no value add, then to shut them down. That's some of the initiatives that I've taken on over the past year. And we were able to reduce our public-facing websites by 8%. And that, again, to reduce the burden on the public of just having to, I would say, sift through, if you don't mind me saying, Siobhan, minutia, because we haven't touched it in a very long time. And so really taking a hard look at our existing services, but also looking at those systems and services and determining which ones we want to prioritize in modernizing. leveraging, because we've had significant reductions in the workforce. We've had budget reductions, but taking a look at how we can best use the tools that industry has to offer to fill those gaps. And so AI, as has already been introduced, I think Dan and Anchor as well may have mentioned that, but just looking at what the capabilities are that are more modern. I always come back to this, and I might get frowny faces, which good thing I don't see a whole lot, but Paperwork Reduction Act. I'm still a paper person. I love my notebooks and taking notes, but the Paperwork Reduction Act has been around, I think 1980 or so. And then we, took another look at it in 95. Why is that still a thing? Why are we still talking about paperwork reduction? It's important because we have to think about our customers, our consumers, and the public. Not everyone is on the same level. We still have the elderly community that may not interact with mobile devices. So those are things that we're taking into consideration. And at the end of the day, I really want my organization to be a premier service provider. I know that's what every C-suite says, but I have to put some skin in the game and prioritize digital experience, customer experience, in saying premier services in the same sentence. And I've done that with our strategic plan, our IT strategic plan, and with our priorities for the fiscal year 2026, to where we are putting more emphasis on reliable and predictable services, so that we aren't waiting for someone to call us and tell us that they're having a problem with interacting with our website, that we have that predictive tool sets available to inform us, and we can fix the problem before it is even noticed, but that we're also protecting the data, not only our business data, but the data of our customers, like their personal information, that their PII, and then also upskilling the workforce. So those are just a few of my priorities, and some of the challenges as well for digital capacity and experience.
Thank you so much, Nikki. Just to say, I'm a notebook girl myself. I've got my notebook here, writing notes as we speak. But again, I like what you say, because I think it builds on some of what Dan and Anka were saying as well, in terms of that you're really stepping back and using this digital journey to fundamentally look at kind of all of the services in all of your agencies and how they're delivered. So not just digitalizing those traditional existing processes, but actually thinking, is there a better way that we could do this? Do we need all of these different websites? Are they adding value? And really starting that thinking from the point of view of the citizen. What's best for the citizen? I like what you said around technology. We often hear about technology helps you to deliver more with less, but I think what you're saying is, in light of some of those reductions in budgets, in workforce numbers, for example, you're actually using technology to deliver better, to deliver excellence, even in those kind of conditions that you're working in. And again, mirroring what Dan said about accessibility, that excellent doesn't necessarily mean everybody's got to go digital. You're still making sure it's inclusive as well for everybody. And then adding on, I think, those 2 points for your priorities, which we haven't had yet, the importance of data security being really important for you, and the importance of skilling up your staff, making sure that your staff can be brought along on this journey and have the skills that they need to fully engage in this journey. Thank you so much. I think that's great in terms of setting the scene from our first question. I've got several other questions to ask, but we already have a question in. This is a question from Sarah Ray. And Sarah has said, I like this question. How do you estimate or track the size of the specialist digital workforce that you need to deliver on your digital strategy? And how are you thinking about build versus buy when it comes to digital products and services? So there's 2 parts to that question. Maybe you can answer either as well, but I'm particularly interested as well in that first bit. So we are saying we've got tight budgets. We're saying there are already workforce reductions. Have you thought about the makeup of your workforce going forward? So I'll start with you, Nikki. You're saying you want to upskill kind of your existing workforce, but do you have a kind of sense of what percentage of your workforce you think should be digitally kind of specialists or digitally literate? What are you thinking in terms of those kind of issues?
Yes. Thank you again, Siobhan, and thank you for the question, I think, Sarah. as far as in 25, probably about 6 or 7 months ago, I established for the department the Digital and Customer Experience Program Office. This is a first. We've not ever had this type of service, and I'll say thoughtfulness in how we deliver our services. My team right now is small, but it's not information technology. It's not focused solely on technology. It is focused on human-centered design. It is focused on communications, factoring in plain language, those aspects. It is also focused on just program project management. I have not integrated any of the technology positions into that office yet, because I don't want it to just focus on technology. We have a tendency to get into the weeds on tool sets when we haven't even factored in the human aspect. So I want to start with that in thinking about the workforce. But right now, I'm keeping that small, even though we have a departmental size of about 150,000 employees. That includes federal and our contract partners. But my team is 4 or 5 people right now.
Right.
But what I am also establishing is a digital and customer experience committee. And I've solicited representatives from across our business units to participate in that committee as we identify the framework and also develop our strategy for digital and customer experience. So a small team is what we're starting with.
Yeah. Thanks, Nikki. Anka, your thoughts on Sarah's question, and really interesting, I think, what Nikki said there, that when you're thinking about kind of specialist digital workforce, you need to be thinking broader as well about kind of citizen-centered design experts as well, and all of those kind of things, rather than creating another new silo maybe of digital experts. So what are you thinking in terms of the future workforce makeup?
So we've done a lot of homework at Department of Transportation over the last 2 to 3 years. About almost 3 years ago now, we made this strategic shift to be reorganized around products. And this started at the Motor Carrier Safety Administration, because I was the deputy CTO at that point in that organization. So I've championed being organized around a product rather than a function. So we used to be functionally organized with, there's a development team, there's a testing team, there's an operations team, there's a security team. We scrapped that and we went out and we did an analysis of what personas do we serve. And based on that, we discovered that these personas need these capabilities. Today, these capabilities are spread out over a portfolio of about 50, 60 applications, depending on who defines the application and how they do it, right? So the number is still the number. And we said, if we productize these capabilities specifically for this person, and our guiding principle was one person should not have to go outside of that one application that they need to do their job, and we call that a product, and then we organize around that product. FMCSA does a lot of registration work, inspection, investigation, compliance, and enforcement. So we organized our product lines based on that, and then we fully staffed those product lines to do the user research that Nikki was talking about, do the design work, do an architecture, have a development team in there, and then even though we're a government agency, we want to think about what the go-to-market strategy is. Yeah, we're not worried about pricing, we're not worried about marketing, we're not worried about advertising on TV, but there is a way you have to take a product into the market, especially when your audience is spread out over 50 states and they have very different motivations to get on or off, right? So we built all those capabilities into each product line. Some were bigger than others because use cases are very different. Inspections and investigations tend to be a lot more labor intensive than a registration process is. So that determined what and how many people were in the product line. You had a support organization that liaised with the infrastructure management, how you provision developer experience and all those things. And that's how we came up with what the capacity is needed for a team.
Mm.
but we built it around products. We didn't say, oh, this is the organization and it'll take whatever it needs to take, because that doesn't work.
Yeah.
And it's also not about just building new products, right? You have an application ecosystem that is there serving today. You have to make sure that's sustained. And when you put new products in place, you have to make sure that those products keep up with the time so that you don't end up with another set of legacy technology 5 years down the line. And unfortunately, we live in a time when you don't even have 5 years anymore. It's
Yeah.
the cycle is like in months, not in years anymore,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
that's how we're thinking about building what an appropriate size of an organization is going to be. Obviously, we live in times where everybody thinks more can be done with less. But I think personally, I think that's a fallacy. We have more workloads that were not digital moving to digital, and I'm not. I mean, I am a physics major, so I don't know how you physically move things to more and do it with less. So I think that's in the world of science, that's a fallacy. Maybe economics works differently, but it's you can't do more and more of something without actually investing in those things. And I think that
Thanks.
the second part of the question was, how do we decide build and buy, right?
Mm.
And that's a question close to my heart, because that brings out the architect in me to talk about those things. The two decision points I almost always use are, number one, if we are doing something that is a strategic core function of the organization and nobody else does it in the world. Like, for example, you cannot go and register a truck with anybody but FMCSA. You just can't, right? Or our trucking company, not a truck, but trucking company, right? You just can't. If that's the case, then I'm the only person that has that product. So we're gonna build that product. We're not gonna buy it. Now, if I am implementing a new call center for all the trucking companies to come and seek help, everybody has a call center. I don't know why I need to build another ServiceNow or a Salesforce or a Remedy or whatever the flavor of the day is. Then we are buying, right? But I'll tell you, even the stuff that we are building, these are not all or nothing decisions, right?
Yeah.
The way we're architecting our applications is they're very modular, they're component based, and the application itself may be built, but we have the opportunity to buy components
Yeah.
and not reinvent them. And I'll give you an example. We implemented a registration system and an inspection system in the last couple of years. We are using login.gov as our authentication from GSA. We are using Google Map API to pinpoint locations. We're not rebuilding them. We are using pay.gov for payment processing. We're not building them. We are using IDEMIA to validate identities for folks that are coming. We're not building it. And to verify businesses, we are using Thomson Reuters Clear. So we use components that are commercially available, yet at the end of the day, when you look at a product, that's a custom built product for a very specific need.
Ankur, thanks. And I can see Dan nodding there from GSA. Dan, I imagine that second part of the question is quite close to your heart, considering how you work with other agencies as well on those kind of issues.
Yeah, absolutely. My default setting is always to look at buy first, because the laws of economies of scale are very real. And when we are making trade-offs on requirements, I think that's what Ankur was really getting towards, which is where are the trade-offs you're making on what is completely specialized to my mission space and what is something that maybe this buy activity doesn't give me 100%, but it gets me 95. What's my pain threshold to make those trade-offs? Those are really important to identify. But knowing that one of the reasons we've been able to keep technology moving forward is by leveraging economies of scale. I mean, that's what cloud computing is economies of scale. That's what software as a service is. It's economies of scale, and there's a lot of places we can find that all over. I think when it comes down to meeting the requirements and having the team you need to accomplish things, it's always really tough, especially when we mentioned disruptive technologies and things are changing. And in some ways, teams are doing more than they ever did before because they're getting the support from the AI tool. I would say rather than a generic, it would be very difficult to have a large scale workforce planning activity than it is focusing on team and product, what like Ankur and Nikki had mentioned before, which is focusing in on getting the teams that you need and understanding that team's capacity.
Mm.
And if you're falling short of mission, is not to punish that team, but to see how do we expand or augment or multiply that team, and to have multiple teams, I think is really, really important. Versus kind of the way we used to look at it, a few decades ago, where everybody needed to have kind of the same basic, A+ training from Microsoft, and there's a lot of 101 stuff that we cared about a lot. But now folks are bringing a lot more unique perspectives and are working faster. And I think by the time we got our arms around our IT team needs, the technology would have already changed and moved on. And so that's one of our challenges in technology, is keeping up with it all the time.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Just to the audience, do keep your questions coming in, but I'm going to move on to my next question to all of you. And I'm going to do it as kind of a double-edged question, really, which is, have you got any examples you can share with the audience then of where you think kind of digitalizing or building that digital capacity is already reaping benefits? So where you're seeing already some real benefits of doing this well, but also on the flip side, because I think sometimes we're not as honest about this as we could be in these kind of safe space conversations, is where are the really frustrating things for you, the biggest barriers when it comes to building digital capacity? And are they kind of related to your people, or are they related, you've mentioned kind of legacy systems, for example. So where are the big stubborn barriers that are preventing you from doing more in this space? Dan, I'll come back to you on this one.
Yeah, that's a really important question. I think a lot of the barriers and the things that we worry about are, of course, adversarial capabilities and supply chain worries that our adversaries also have a different tool set that's evolving quickly as well. And so the importance of cyber and making sure that we're doing everything we can from a security standpoint is really important. In one of my other roles, we help manage federal identity and credentialing for the federal government through digital credentials, both logical and physical. And right now, NIST and OMB have set deadlines for the post-quantum identity management transition that we'll be going through as a federal government by 2030. That means industry needs to adapt. We need to adapt. We have a lot of legacy hardware and legacy business processes that are going to have to be accelerate. We're going to have to accelerate adoption of deploying technology that has encryption capabilities that are post-quantum strong. It's going to be a major lift of the federal government coming forward. And so that will require changes all the way from PIV card readers, and operating systems on users' laptops. And so we talk a lot about AI, but quantum is also a really important factor in there, as well as its ability to defeat legacy encryption algorithms. I think the other part of the question is what areas are seeing success. I'm a big fan, even in my own small team, of starting multiple sandboxes for different purposes and seeing what works and what doesn't work. We've had great partnerships with industry, their willingness to give us temporary licenses. We've been able to share sandboxes across agencies under, MOU agreements, which is great. And so we're not going to stop experimenting even beyond our direct mission space, which is doing policy. Our mission space is helping every other agency be successful. So in some cases, rolling out a very strong USAI, well-organized AI chatbot platform is the right answer, and it solves all kinds of problems, especially when we can attach APIs to it. But in some cases, we're going to need other places to test other kinds of technology from smaller vendors, test other technologies from other disruptors that are in this space as well. Not necessarily AI, but other emerging technology activities. That has got to be a major investment right now for a lot of organizations. Otherwise, we'll wake up and we will have been passed by, and that's not a win for the public sector at all.
Yeah. Thanks, Dan. So some of the things I noted down there, and then Nikki, I'll come to you for your thoughts on the same thing. So in terms of some of the things that you think where you've made good progress and where it's reaping benefits already, the use of sandboxes, so creating those spaces for testing and experimentation has gone well. Partnering some new partnerships, maybe with industry, and building those kind of collaborative approaches across sectors, and then sharing some of that good practice across agencies. We were saying that sometimes that the silos between agencies and departments, we were all talking before we went live, can be a barrier to kind of progress in some of these areas. So good to hear that some of that sharing you're thinking is going on well. But in terms of some of the kind of frustrations, maybe some of the barriers and concerns, maybe obviously concerns around cyber and cyber security, always big issues. Looking ahead to kind of rolling out of the digital credentials. And I think the issue of trust, maybe those two things connected as well, is how do you build trust for some of these new approaches, really, really important. So maybe the audience might have questions around those. And then really that fundamental shifting in mindsets away from some of the legacy systems and the old ways of doing things to a new world of working. You mentioned quantum there. It's definitely not my specialist area. I feel like I'm probably not the best person, but that's coming up more and more in our conversations as well when we're talking about the potential opportunities that quantum computing will have for the public sector as well going forward. Thanks so much, Dan. Nikki, similarly to you. So where are you seeing already the benefits of this new digital capacity that you've been building, and where are some of your biggest frustrations in the barriers that you're facing?
I hate to be redundant, but I think Dan hit it on the nose when the key points that he'd already brought up. Some of the things that resonate most with me as far as the successes are the ability to share. Now we're sharing across the federal government and not just within our own respective departments, but the ability to interconnect systems as well. And so that reduces the cost paying for these like or similar systems when we can just interconnect and be able to feed some of that data that we all have a need to access between organizations. I think that's a valuable process there. I hate to get back to paperwork reduction because it's something I deal with on a daily basis. But I really, one of the things that I like about the Paperwork Reduction Act is that it allows the public to also weigh in and provide comments on when you're, standing up a new survey or a new website. It allows a period of review for the public to comment, and that we hear from the citizens before we're designing capabilities. Some of the challenges, I don't think it's going to be anything new that I'm going to say. The legacy systems, the fact that some of those, back to Dan's point on, I'll call it out, the zero trust architecture. Just being able to modernize the identity, because some of those systems are just that old that they don't even have a capability to modernize. But that holds up the progress of being able to have more of that collaboration and information sharing. I think that also introduces a risk as well to from a cyber perspective. But while I'm talking about cyber, one of the points that I kind of emphasize within my own organization is cyber should not be a hindrance to us being able to use technology. So let's figure out how to remove those barriers that we put in place because of security controls. Not to say work around them, but how can we ease the strain on the usability of that X thing. I think that is probably the couple of things that come to fragmented governance too. If I can go back, I'm going backwards. is that we are now approaching the digital capacity at a federal level. Having more of those working groups to where we can come together and collaborate and standardize how we are approaching digital capacity. So that is a good news story from our perspective. And we have a series of forums that we do that under the leadership of our federal Chief Information Officer.
Thanks, Nikki. So adding in there, I think some of the things that you've found are working well, more sharing across federal departments, so the ability to share good practice, but also share data, for example, that's working better than previously. Getting the governance structures less fragmented, so bringing those together and having more standardized approach in terms of the governance structures. But maybe and also giving the public more of a voice through things like, as you say, the Paperwork Reduction Act and that feedback in from the citizens. But again, some of the frustrations mirroring, I think, what Dan said as well around the legacy systems, but also not using cyber, getting the balance right between making sure everything's as secure as possible, but not putting so much friction in the system that you slow everything down. So having to get that balance right as well. Thanks. Ankur, I'm going to come to you in a bit of a challenge back from what Nikki and Dan said. If we're talking about citizen-centered approach, do you think the citizen would recognize all of this better sharing is going on? Does it feel like to them that government is becoming more connected and that they only have to kind of, for example, do things once?
In some cases, yes. In a lot of cases, no. And I'll give you an example of a yes case. So at Department of Transportation, we used to have a program called Data for Free. So if you wanted some data that is publicly available, but you don't feel like going through 10 different sources and curating your own data set, you could pick up the phone or send an email and you get a ticket, and somebody a few days later will give you back a data set for a nominal fee, whatever that fee was. Like, so let's say $30 per argument's sake. And you got data for $30. As a part of our digital transformation, one of our guiding principles is the producer of the information and the consumer of the information should be as close to the data source as possible without any intervention in the middle. Because safety is a direct function of you having information at hand to make a decision right there and then. And the more we can facilitate that, the safer we are. It's easier to participate in the safety process. If we just left it at that, the consumer doesn't know what that means, right?
Yeah.
But what we did was we looked at the data set requests that we had received over 3 years. And we said, these are the data sets people are generally looking for. We had already put in a data infrastructure in place that consumed all of our transactional data from our transaction systems, put them in a data lake. We had the ability to curate data sets through our data warehouse platform, and then we connected those curated data sets directly to data.transportation.gov, where anybody can use transportation data for free. And we automated that pipeline for those commonly used 10 data sets that everybody had every report for. And today, if you are a member of the public, you can go and get any one of those 10 data sets for free, and they're refreshed every morning before 9 o'clock.
Right.
Up-to-date information you get for free. We eliminated the data for free program.
Yeah.
Right. So as a citizen now, what you see is I don't have to pay for it, and I don't have to wait 7 days to get that data either.
Yeah.
Whenever I want, it's on demand there. And by the way, it also gives you an in-place visualization, so you don't even have to download it if you don't want to. If you're just asking a question, like how many companies registered yesterday, you can go and visualize it and it'll tell you what it does.
Right. Right.
So those kind of things, folks will see an immediate impact from a public perspective. But a big part of our user base is also not public, but law enforcement agencies. There are about 25 to 30,000 law enforcement agents that use our inspection system. The public doesn't see this because there's no direct dealing with them, but our goal is to make sure that when you're driving in your car from school to home or home to work, you're safe and you're always in the vicinity of a truck.
Mm.
And if the truck is safe, you're safe, right?
Mm.
If the truck is not safe, you could be as safe as you want. There's a chance, right? So there's no direct visibility into what that means, but inspections are a way of ensuring that the roadways are safe.
Yeah.
So when we modernize the inspection software, every single inspection platform at that point was a client server application that ran on a PC somewhere, right? Very hard to get a PC close to a truck when you're inspecting it, I would assume, right? So we built a progressive web app that worked offline, and all it needed was a browser. So you could run on an iPad, your phone, even a $10 tablet from Amazon if it had a browser, and you could take it right up to the truck. Allows you to do inspection really fast. You can't fat finger anything because checks are already built in, and you can get that truck on the road. From a trucker's perspective, if their wheels are moving, they're making money, so they have to wait less time. From a public perspective, we are doing faster inspections, so technically we can do more. So everybody's there. So that's sort of an invisible effect that happens.
Yeah.
And from a data gathering perspective, we get more accurate data faster, which allows us to inform policy and rulemaking a lot better than with data that's unclean. Now, there was a challenge question in there, and the challenge is, no matter how fast and forward-thinking we are, one thing that hasn't changed, and I'm thinking there's on the docket to be changed, is the entire policy/rulemaking process in the government, right? Rules and laws take a long time to be approved and implemented. Even if I can show you empirical evidence of saying, do X, Y, Z right now, and you will see 10% improvement. By the time you implement it, it's like 3 years down the line. At that point, whether it's relevant or not is up for debate, right? So I think that the pace of technology and the pace at which our rulemaking and policies move are stark contrasts, and that's a huge issue.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's for good reason as well, right? I mean, you don't want to make knee-jerk reactions in some cases as well. So.
Anka, thanks so much. Really like your two examples there. One, very open to the public. They can see the changes, they can see the benefits, they get access to all of that data on demand in ways that's very user friendly. But also what you were saying, because I think a lot of technology is used in these cases where it's all behind the scenes. It's making things better for the public. They don't necessarily see all of that work that goes on.
Right. And the other thing is, like, especially in the mission of transportation, it's as I call it's a thankless mission, right? Because we grow up in this world where heroes are welcome, right? Because everybody praises the firefighter that runs into a fiery building and brings out a child, right? But nobody claps for the mom that doesn't let the fire start in the first place, right? So transportation is something like that. We are judged by the accidents that happen, but nobody knows how many were prevented.
Yeah.
Because that's not visible.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that challenge, very good example there of that challenge of technology is moving so fast, and we're in this world now where everybody's moving fast. Citizens want things fast, they want answers, they want delivery of services very quickly. But our traditional decision making and policy making and legislative processes aren't fast. And how do we reconcile those? Because it goes back to, I think, Nikki's thing. You want everything secure and safe, and there's good reasons why we do it in that way. But we equally want it to be done in a way that now meets the demands of the modern world that we're in. So there's a real tension there as well. Dan, I'm coming back to you for a question from, it might be Jean, it might be Jean, I'm not sure, Maro, who has said, Dan, you mentioned quantum computing, and Dan, you're going to have to do this in about 2 minutes. This is a challenge to you. What would the implementation of quantum look like in government? So I think just a very high level, when you're talking about quantum, computing, what are the kinds of things that this might help or transform when it comes to public policy?
Yeah, that's a really fantastic question, and I'm not being glib, that it is an hour-long answer there, but the capability of quantum computers to solve for multiple variables besides the one and zero that we're very familiar with allows computing to we can assess so many more variables in such a shorter period of time than we can in traditional computing, which means things in which the quantitative load on a traditional chip cannot handle it. It's the multiple throughput, and it's the ability to shift those variables in real time, which really matters. It has an immediate effect once quantum computers are purchasable off the shelf. It has immediate effect on our encryption capabilities that we've relied on for many years. Many of those encryption capabilities will no longer work. They will not be able to withstand a quantum computer and its ability to crack all those codes. Remember, the original Bletchley Park computer was designed to break German codes. In that way, that is one use of a quantum computer. But I think for scientific research, it's going to be amazing. I think the Department of Energy, the EPA they're going to be able to model nature and other scientific capabilities in ways that we've never been able to heretofore. We have an immediate problem for cyber that needs to be addressed. And I think it's going to take the federal government a while to reap the benefit. Besides we will be reaping the benefit long after we've kind of plugged the hole of the security problem that it presents. So, but I wish I was an expert on it, and I know that was longer than 2 minutes, so I apologize.
No, I think that's brilliant. I've never heard it done so concisely. And I think the answer to Jean as well is we'll have to do another webinar, I think, on quantum because it is an issue that's coming up increasingly now. And I think people are very excited by it, but equally, as you mentioned there, the security, but there are also concerns around the kind of environmental impact, the energy consumption requirements, and all of those kind of issues around quantum. So I think we'll park that for now, and we will put on a webinar on quantum, which I may or may not chair that particular webinar. I have a final question myself, but to the audience, if you have any question you would like to put on anything digital, so it can be anything at all, now is your opportunity to do it. But my final question, and Anka, I'm going to start with you on this one is, I mean, we have mentioned some of the benefits, we've mentioned some of the challenges as well. But if government gets this right, if the American government continue to build digital capacity in the way that they would like to, what's the end kind of big prize here? How transformative will this be for the way that we deliver to our citizens?
So, in my world, or in my opinion at least, from Ankur's lens, success, if we build digital capacity the right way and we approach digital transformation the right way, means we never do modernization projects ever again. If we build products the right way and we keep them up to times, we will never have to do modernization projects again. That, to me, is a successful technology organization, always aligned with its user base, delivering services that are current, relevant, and contemporary to the times. I can assure you, every time you see a modernization or a digital transformation project, we've at least failed our audience for like 3 years. Because that's when they start shouting and complaining, and then we're like, yeah, we should probably think about these things. So success to me means like we are always in lockstep with whoever uses our products and services, and they are getting what they need every single day. Otherwise, we will always have these holes that can be plugged in by people like to call them shadow IT, people going out and buying stuff and injecting them. And those are all symptoms of a larger disease that exists in the organization, and that is people not getting what they need. So that's what success looks to me.
I love the way that you said that. I've never heard anybody articulate it quite like that, but it makes perfect sense when you put it like that, that it's not a kind of we do this once and then we wait until we get all of the problems and we modernize again. This is a kind of continuing now process, where, as you say, you're always in lockstep with the needs of your citizens and the expectations of your citizens. So it's that ongoing process. I really, really like that. Nikki, what Anka was saying, does that match with your vision? How do you see, if you get this right, what would kind of the Department of Justice, how would that feel like an interaction with the citizens?
Yeah, I completely agree with Ankar. I literally wrote down transformation is the continuous life cycle. And so I completely agree. It's better. I'm just going to throw out some buzzwords to make sure you can get to Dan. Just better design. It allows us to tie our priorities and our resources to measurable impacts. It's a demonstration of us being a good steward of taxpayers' dollars. It's transparency. It reduces, minimizes, and just simply removes the burden on the citizen. Those are things that I am thinking about on a continuous basis, and I think this is what digital transformation does.
Brilliant. Thank you. And I think that goes back to something you said earlier as well, doesn't it, Nikki, which you said we shouldn't wait for the citizen to tell us there are problems. We should the technology can help us proactively identify these problems and streamline and remove some of those barriers. So as you say, being good stewards of taxpayers' dollars, which is ultimately what we all are as public servants, I think, and removing those burdens from the citizen. So we take on those kind of burdens and we make sure those are removed wherever we can. And transformation as a continuous. Dan, I started with you, so I'm going to give you the last words on this. And obviously, you have this kind of oversight where you work with different agencies. So, if we get this right, what does that mean across the federal government and the way that we all deliver services out to citizens?
I think Nikki said it absolutely perfectly, and I just want to double down on her comments. It's fantastic. We look at the word burden, and sometimes we look at the word friction as well. I think in the public sector, we've been generationally accused of bureaucratic processes and creating friction and slowing things down. And we know things need to be done in a legal way that matches due process, and we are definitely in that business. But if there's anything technology can do to maintain the integrity of the public administration while also reducing friction and accelerating things that don't need to take as long as maybe they did in a previous generation, I think that's what this win would look like, to answer your question.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. So modernizing, but removing those frictions and increasing the pace as well, because I think that's what all of our citizens and our staff, I think we forget that a lot of this transformation is our internal processes as well as the services that we deliver out to our citizens. Thank you so much, everybody. I think we have come to the end of our time. I'm just checking that there is no final question in from the audience. Really enjoyed that conversation. I think you've given a very positive vision of the future. And if we get this right, just truly how transformative this will be for staff and for citizens. Thank you so much to Anka, to Dan, to Nikki for lending us so much of our time. I know how busy you all are at the moment, so really do appreciate you giving us your time and your expertise. Thank you to the audience for registering today, for being part of this conversation. We will share a link of this conversation with everybody who registered. For those that couldn't watch it live, they are able to watch it on demand as well. So if you think you have colleagues who would be interested in this conversation, once we share you that link, please do share it with your colleagues as well. And there will be a write-up of today's webinar from the key points that come out of today's webinar, which we will share with everybody very shortly as well. We will also send the audience a very, very short questionnaire. I'd be really grateful if you could answer that. It'll only take a couple of minutes. It means that here at Global Government Forum, we keep giving you webinars that are on topics that are of most interest and importance to you. But that's it from me here in an unusually sunny afternoon for once this year. Thank you so much to all of you. Enjoy the rest of the day and I hope to see you on another one of our webinars very shortly. Thanks a lot, everybody. Goodbye.